It's a good day for a swell battle. So one of my main goals for this year was to play more indie games, as some of them have become some of my favourite games out there. One of the games that's had my attention for a while was Cuphead, so you can imagine how happy I was to see it announced for the Switch back in March, and after playing through it twice, once on stream, once off stream, I can safely say it didn't disappoint. The bosses in this game were the main highlight. You have to go after them to collect their debts they owe the devil, and they'll do anything they can to stop you doing that, as they love to murder you. But it was incredibly satisfying to work out their attack patterns, and eventually hearing that knockout sound for the most part. Sadly, key phrase, for the most part. Whilst the vast majority of them were awesome, there were some that I just found to be plain obnoxious. So based on my own personal experiences, these are my 5 favourite and least favourite of the boss fights. Actually, picking 5 bad bosses was pretty much impossible, as number 5 is more just F than bad. But still, I'm not a big fan of the Ribby and Croaks fight. My main problem with this fight is just how little there is going on. I know it's an early boss and it's meant to be simple, but the Root Pack and Goopoo were exciting, and one of those could be your first boss. All the first phase has you doing is dodging predictable Hadoukens and fireflies that you can easily destroy. Phase 2, Ribby will roll off to the other side and only fire balls that bounce off the screen. Meanwhile, Croaks will try to blow you towards or away from him. Both of these 2 phases have very little going on, and you can easily get through these without taking any damage. The final phase is a little bit better, but still really easy. After parrying the slot machine, it'll randomly land on 3 symbols, which will change how the chips shot out will behave. If it's snake, it'll just be fast green ones. Tiger, they'll have bouncing balls coming out. And finally, if it's bison, it'll have fire shooting out of either the top and bottom. All of them are really easy to avoid. The fight overall isn't horrible, it's just kind of boring due to how little is going on. In Cala 2 is where the bosses really began to up the difficulty, which is understandable, and it's also where they became a lot more exciting. My favourite of the bosses in Cala 2 is Beppy the Clown, because each of its 4 phases was a lot of fun. The first phase you have to shoot the ducks to create an opening so you can jump over its bumper car. It's really easy, and you can get him onto phase 2 really quickly. Phase 2 he inflates himself and sends dog blues that home in on you that can easily be destroyed if you have the spreader, but from this phase onwards, a roller coaster will come in, which will make dodging his attacks harder as you'll be constantly moved to the left and having to dodge the passengers as well, making for a fun challenge. After that he deflates back and attacks you on either a green or yellow carousel horse. If it's yellow, horseshoe magnets will fly across the screen before dropping on your mug. If it's green, it'll travel along in a sine wave. If the roller coaster's not there, you can just stay below him and tear him apart. However, if it is there, those horseshoe magnets can be a nightmare to dodge. In the final phase, he'll transform into a chair swing ride, which will lead a platform on to avoid the roller coaster, which clearly hasn't had any safety checks. After that passes, he'll spit out more clowns that'll throw baseballs at you. However, if you have special one, you can just use that to wipe out the penguin clowns, and at that point you should have a clean shot if you stay on the platforms. Each phase has a way you can completely destroy it, but it was incredibly rewarding to find that way. Beppy the Clown stood out during my initial run for how fun he was, and he's definitely the main highlight of Inkwell 2. Anybody who's played Cuphead probably saw this boss coming. I don't think it's quite as bad as it's made out to be, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of the grim Matchstick fight either. And the problem with the fight shows up as soon as you start. The whole fight takes place on randomly generated cloud platforms that limits your movement to dodge his attacks. His fiery meteors usually aren't too bad, neither is his eye ring. It's the tail you should be worried about, because that pretty much cuts the arena in half. The problem here is that depending on where the platforms are, you may find that you have to take a very tricky jump quickly to avoid being hit. In the second phase, he'll fly behind you and stick out his tongue that'll have a brigade of fireballs running across it. However, some of them will try to leap at you, some will aim straight at you, some will try to fake you out, but that's pretty much it. It's never really given me any trouble this phase, but the last phase sure as hell has, where he'll somehow grow an extra 2 heads. His attacks here involve a slow moving fireball that splits when shot, and a giant flamethrower across the middle of the screen. The flamethrower is not too bad as long as you stay on the top of the clouds. It's the shots that are annoying, because they can easily get in the way of your own shots, especially if you brought the chaser, because that'll home in on the fireballs. So if you brought that in, well, I hope your other weapon is useful. The layout of the stage you fight on is the problem here, as depending on the location of the clouds, dodging some of his attacks can be a major pain. Thankfully the pit below isn't an insta-kill, but it'll still damage you. However you take damage in this fight, it'll often feel cheap. A lot of the best bosses in the game came from Inkwell 3, and sadly some of the worst, but I'll get to that later. I mean, you got a queen bee in a skyscraper filled with honey, a mouse who I don't think is as easy as everyone makes him out to be, and a woman who fights you on a stage. And unlike other battles I've fought where you had to fight on the stage, I really like this one. In the first phase, her attacks mainly involve her umbrella. She'll dive at you, send fans that lie on the ground, and it can even swallow her, only for her to try and land on you. She can also blow a kiss to Cuphead, which can easily be neutralised. No wonder the husband's freaking out back there, but he calms down to rush her off to the next phase. In this phase, the two of them have started a family, and the babies will love to drop milk bottles on you. Are these babies psychopaths, and you're not going to do anything about it, mate? Her attacks stay the same, except now she can send out robotic mice that travel on the ground before going up to drop down on you. It's a chaotic second phase, where you'll need to keep an eye on like 4 different things. At the end of this phase, you get to kill her, or not kill her, as she'll now be attacking you in a ghost form, ranging from meteors that you can destroy to reveal a pink star you can parry, big waves that you need that pink star, and lightning to rain down on you. Like Beppy the Clown, if you stand below her, you can use Darth Vader to shoot up her skirt and tear this phase apart. There's more 1930s in this fight than I thought. The final phases are merely really easy, especially after the chaser, but the other phases are a pure test of making sure you know what's going on. Also, it was the first boss I beat without taking a scratch, so it gets bonus points for that too. I love penultimate boss fights. They're often some of my favourite bosses in the game. Unfortunately, this game's penultimate boss fight is one of my least favourites in the game because of how it's set up. You parry the pink dice to get a number from 1 to 3, and the pointer on the board moves that many spaces. What happens depends on the space you land on. If you land on a safe space, you'll just re-roll the die. But land on a number 1 to 9, and you'll be taken to fight a mini boss that can range from really easy to really hard, and a possible health point. By the way, I hope you like loading screens because you'll be seeing a lot of them in this fight, which is one of the reasons I hate it. Because of the slow loading times in this game, about a quarter of this fight is just loading screens. I always go for 2 or 3 depending where the heart is, 6 and then 9, because they're the easiest ones I find, but you'll have to learn so many boss strategies for this fight. Also avoid this bastard of a space at the end, as that'll make you redo the entire board, but get to the end of the board and it's King Dice himself. All he does is send out cards in a predictable pattern, some of which you have to parry to avoid them all, and that's literally it. As long as you can time your parries, which you should long be able to do by this point, you can get through this last part easily. For a penultimate boss, it's really bad. The loading screens are annoying to deal with, the long length makes it infuriating to die, and the fight with King Dice himself barely has anything to it, but I would easily fight this guy over and over again, then even look at these last two. You know what's awesome? When you're given an awesome send-off before the final world, and the Phantom Express does that incredibly well. Well, he's usually not the last boss I go for in the world, but you'll see why. Oh, you'll see why. The Phantom Express is oddly enough one of the easier bosses in the game. Seriously, the main threat of this boss is these flying pumpkins dropping pink soap bars on the platform you're on. The thing has these pink bolts that will move if you parry them, and those pink soap bars can parry the car for you, making dodging the Blind Spectre's eyeballs and the T-Bone's predictable hand strikes a lot harder. The Blind Spectre can be torn apart easily if you have the horseshoe shot, and the T-Bone is really easy as long as you keep an eye on the pumpkins. Following that is the Blaze Brothers, who'll shoot electricity across 2/3 of the arena, so if you're not at the very sides, have fun dodging that. Also, why are they called the Blaze Brothers when they don't shoot fire? Anyway, and then there's finally the train itself. You need to parry the tail to expose its weak point, not too bad, but watch out for those damn bone rings as they've caught me out more times than I care to count. The fight is one of the best views in the parry mechanic, as you'll need to time them well if you want any chance on this boss, especially if you don't want those pumpkins messing you up. However, there is one boss in Inkwell 3 I like a little bit more. A couple of bosses in this game were fully in play mode, and they were often some of my least favourite in the game due to how similar they all felt. You don't get all the weapon choices that you normally do on foot, you only get basic shots, and later on a bomb that drops down in an arc, meaning you have less options to attack the boss. I'm spoiling the rest of the worst part of this list now. My 2 least favourite bosses in the game are in play mode. Cala Maria is just a pain to fight. The first phase she has 3 main attacks. She'll either summon a red fish that will fire 6 shots at you, some of which you can parry, a yellow fish that will shoot out an electric dolphin that will home in on you, and finally, spitting out 3 ghosts that home in on you. The attacks on their own aren't too bad, but she can also summon sea life to help her. The seahorse will spit out a stream of water that doesn't hurt you but pushes you up, the turtle will send out bombs that explode in all 8 directions, and the puffer fishes that rise from the sea. But she can use any of her attacks at the same time as summoning the sea creatures, and it's completely random what comes up, so depending on the combination of attacks you use it, you could either have a really easy time, or an absolute nightmare. But the real problem with this fight comes in the final 2 phases. Why? Because of the goddamn stoning. If you're stoned, you can't move until you free yourself, and it's near impossible to see it coming, so you're wide open to all the electric shots that the eels shoot out. But the real pain comes in the final phase, because you enter a cave which limits your vertical movement, and that eye beam of hers, which also stones you, covers up most of the cave, so once again, you're wide open to hit. The problems with this fight is the stoning, because it leads to annoying hit after annoying hit, especially if you're in a bad position. Whenever I get stoned, it honestly just feels like a luck of the draw whether I get hit or not. So my favourite boss in Inkwell 3 is also now one of my all-time favourite non-final bosses. Captain Bradbeard is nothing short of a masterpiece of a boss fight. Sure, it starts out easy, just dodging his octopus abuse with parry opportunities galore, and that barrel trying to crush you, but once enough damage is taken, it'll start to summon sea life to help send you to the bottom of the ocean. The squid will darken the screen, but it won't hurt you, and it can be easily destroyed if you have the spreader. The dogfishes can also be destroyed easily. It's the shark you want to be aware of, as that thing takes out like 2/3 of the arena, and may I remind you, that barrel still wants to land on you. Eventually the ship will start shooting out cannonballs from its mouth on top of what's already going on, until it goes, you know what? It, and sends Bradbeard flying. In this final phase, he'll shoot a looping fireball that you need to jump over, and his very own giant laser similar to the first super art you obtained. What a fight this is! Throughout the whole fight, it's multiple things to deal with all after another, and it's nothing short of an absolute blast. But before the obvious number one, it's time to rip into the boss that heavily soured my first playthrough. I'm just going to cut to the chase on this one. Dr. Cala is one of the most obnoxious bosses I've ever fought. Weirdly enough, the first phase is probably the most annoying to deal with, mainly because of that laser. Every few seconds, it'll grow in size and block your shots, pretty much cutting the arena in half temporarily, which is annoying to deal with when he also shoots a pink generator that generates electricity that also cuts the arena in half, requiring a parry to shut it down, and the stomach which sends out Gallagher. You'll need to destroy all three parts, that being the laser cannon and the two hatches on the robot, but even when you do destroy one of those parts, they just change their attacks. The nuts and bolts from the head aren't too bad, but when the chest is destroyed, it can use a magnet to make dodging the nuts and bolts a lot harder, or it'll fire shots out of his arm. And finally, when his stomach's destroyed, that'll send out missiles that'll home in on you and have a massive blast radius. Seriously, screw those bombs. Once all three are destroyed, his heart will be vulnerable, and you can finally damage the machine itself. Shoot that heart enough, and it begins phase 2. This phase isn't actually too bad, as all he does is fly around the arena with those homing missiles going after you. Just watch out for that bomb off screen. And then there's the last phase where you face off against Dr. Cala himself. His Chaos Emeralds will be firing bullets all over the place, some of which you can parry, in conjunction with the electric grids that come in. And this phase has more health than it has any right to have. I think what I hate the most about this boss fight is that it's a massive spike in difficulty. I lost 196 lives on my first playthrough, and this boss must have taken out about a quarter of them. It actually took out more lives than all the bosses in the first two worlds combined. Sadly, this is now one of my most hated bosses out there now, because of all the obnoxious attacks it has, which is sad because Cuphead overall was amazing. And my number one favourite boss is one of the reasons why. If there's one boss I'm really excited to fight in a new game, it's definitely the final boss. Yep, the devil is a real high class bow. It has two phases, and both of them are an absolute blast. The first phase he has 4 main attacks. You can turn into a spider which will try to land on you, a ram which will try to crush you requiring a well-timed jump and air dash, and a serpent where you'll need to get to the opposite side of the arena from where you originally came from. All the while, his minions are alternating from left and right. Probably the hardest attack he has though is the trident. The 4 bouncing crystals where one of them can be parried isn't too bad, neither is the 6 homing shots. It's the 5 I have a problem with, because you have to time your dash well to get through the 4 moving blue fireballs. The first is a great test of your skill, as you'll need to use all of the moves in the game and work out which of your weapons are the best for each situation. After a while, the guy will jump out of his skin and become giant for the final phase. Definitely never seen a final boss do that before. The second phase has many sub-phases within it. In the first part, he has 2 main attacks, an axe that gradually spins out further, and a bat bomb which you will want to parry or stay far away from, because that blast radius is huge. Also, you have the poker periodically falling on the 5 platforms. After enough hits, the platforms are reduced to 3, and he'll summon overweight winged demons that fire skulls, or the easy to dodge mini demons. Once he's on the brink, it'll just be the one platform where you'll have to parry his tears to avoid the single chip falling on you. Bit of a letdown for a final phase, but it's incredibly satisfying to land that final hit and complete this bitch of a game, and I mean that in the best way. At that point, Cuphead and Mugman successfully destroy the debts of everyone, so more of the story is, if you can't pay off your debt, beat up the person you owe and you'll be fine. Unlike my bad jokes, Cuphead overall was amazing. If you like hard games and have a Nintendo Switch, you've probably already got this.